The whole backwards compatibility argument. So let me clear something up. The Wii U didn't actually have a Wii emulator. Emulators emulate hardware. Your modern computer runs so fast at this point that it just cannot interpret the code from an original NES. Original NES code expected the original NES processor. It expected things to run at a certain speed. If you tried to run old NES software directly on modern hardware, it would just break. Emulators, on the other hand, mimic that old hardware with software. They artificially recreate the timing and capabilities of the NES hardware system entirely in software. That's what an emulator does. The Wii U, on the other hand, was a different matter entirely. The Wii's firmware was actually relatively modern, so it could be run on the Wii U's hardware no problem. The Wii U didn't actually have an emulator for the Wii. It wasn't mimicking the Wii's hardware. It just had a second operating system built in, a Wii operating system. When you wanted to play games, you would boot up the Wii U into Wii mode, insert your game, and off you go. No hardware had to be emulated. It just ran perfectly on the Wii U's specs. So now that that's cleared up, let's talk about backward compatibility in general. Most of the time, when something's backward compatible, they just include the old hardware. This is how the original PS3 FAT ended up playing PS2 games. It literally just had a PS2 inside it. This is unsustainable. You can't just keep cramming old hardware into new systems. Microsoft is actually lucky. Most of their consoles are built off of Windows architecture, and Windows architecture is heavily future-proofed. That allows old software to continue to be run on new hardware for a very long time, and with very minimal interference, even though they too have to sometimes resort to emulation. Do I think backwards compatibility is good for game preservation? I'm not sure. The problem is backwards compatibility is in the hands of console developers, and console developers aren't actually that great at future-proofing their stuff. Look at Sony. Every PlayStation is such a different architecture than the last that it's been a real rough time trying to get backward compatibility to work. So there are a lot of points of failure there. All it takes is for a company to not include backward compatibility in one generation, and then suddenly all your game preservation efforts are lost. That's why I think that we really need to decouple game preservation from the companies that make the games. I don't think that Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft have the ability to preserve their games, nor should they have to. Their job is just to make new games and new game hardware, and to distribute the games of third-party publishers. Actually preserving those games should be the job of a librarian. It should be the job of someone who has studied their entire life on the best ways to preserve these games.